The new quote-unquote magic number Americans believe they need to retire comfortably is $1.46 million.
Wow.
Right. And that's up from 1.26 million just 1 year prior.
What's fascinating here is that the 1.46 million isn't just, a number pulled out of thin air.
Oh, it's not.
No, there's a specific mathematical mechanism behind it. It's heavily based on what financial planners call the 4% rule.
Right, which assumes you aren't just like stuffing cash under a mattress. Your money stays invested while you're retired.
It's exactly. The concept is that if you have a balanced portfolio of stocks and bonds, you can safely withdraw 4% of your total savings in your first year of retirement.
Okay.
And then in subsequent years, you adjust that withdrawal amount upward to account for inflation.
Got it.
So historically, if you follow that rule, your money should theoretically last for a 30-year retirement without running out.
So, if we do the math on that new magic number, 4% of 1.46 million, that gives you about $58,000 a year in annual income.
Right.
If you break that down, you're looking at roughly $4,800 a month to live on.
Which, depending on your property taxes and healthcare costs, that's a pretty comfortable middle-class existence in many parts of the country.
Yeah, but getting to $1.5 million to generate that income, I mean, that's the monumental hurdle here.
Definitely. And Fidelity has this widely cited rule of thumb that says you need to save 10 times your final working income by age 67.
10 times.
Yeah, and they break that massive goal into smaller age-based milestones. So Fidelity suggests you should have 1 times your current salary saved by age 30.
By age 40, you should have 3 times your salary. By 50, it should be 6 times, and by 60, 8 times.
And when you look at the headline data released by the big brokerages, it almost paints a picture that people are cruising right past those marks.
It really does.
Like Vanguard reported their average 401k balance at the end of 2025 was $166,970, which is a massive 13% increase from the year before.
Yeah.
And Fidelity reported average balances of $146,400 for corporate 401ks, and similarly, $133,500 for 403(b) accounts.
Right, which is the equivalent plan used by teachers, nurses, nonprofit workers.
Exactly.
Which, sounds like an incredible economic victory on paper.
It does, but I have to push back on this, though. Because when you throw those numbers at a listener who is, say, 35 years old, trying to juggle rising rent and grocery bills.
Yeah, the cost of living right now is brutal.
Right. Hearing that the average 401k has almost $170,000 in it, it just causes overwhelming anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. It makes you feel like you are completely failing at life. I mean, looking at these average retirement balances is like, well, it's like putting Elon Musk in a room full of broke college students, doing the math, and declaring that the average person in that room is a billionaire.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. Averages just completely distort the reality on the ground.
You're hitting on a vital statistical flaw in how we talk about wealth.
Uh-huh.
We really have to separate the mean, which is the average, from the median.
Okay, let's break that down for everyone.
So the mean simply adds up all the money in the system and divides it by the number of accounts.
Right.
But in the retirement savings ecosystem, you have this small, highly compensated group of super savers sitting on multi-million-dollar accounts.
The Elon Musks of the 401k world.
Exactly. And they heavily skew those average figures upward.
So to find out what is really happening to the typical American worker, we need to throw out the average entirely and look at the median. And the median is the dead center point. Like you line everybody up from poorest to richest, and you point to the person standing exactly in the middle. Half the people have more, half the people have less.
And when we shift our lens to the median, the entire narrative flips from this Wall Street celebration to a sobering reality check.
Brace yourselves for this one.
Yeah. According to the NIRS report, the median savings for all employed adults in the United States, ages 21 to 64, is just $955.
Wait, I need to make sure you, the listener, heard that correctly. Not $95,000. $955.
Yeah.
How is it even mathematically possible that the dead center of the American workforce has less than $1,000 saved for the future?
It comes down to structural access. The reason that median number is so staggeringly low is that over half of American households, 54% to be exact, report having absolutely zero dedicated retirement savings.
Zero. Wow.
None. Furthermore, 56 million workers don't even have access to an employer-sponsored plan.
That's a huge chunk of the workforce.
It is. And if your employer doesn't offer a 401k, the likelihood of you navigating the complexities of setting up an IRA on your own drops significantly.
Right. But even if we filter out the people who don't have access, And look only at workers who actually have a retirement account, the median balance is still only $40,000.
Yeah.
Going back to our 4% rule, if you retire with $40,000, you are generating $1,600 a year.
A year, not a month.
Exactly. That doesn't even cover a month's rent in most cities.
Yeah.
And when you look at public forums like Reddit, the frustration is palpable.
Oh, yeah. The threads on this are intense.
One user in a massive Arconomics thread discussing this exact NIRS data captured the mood perfectly. They argued that having $0 saved isn't a financial literacy problem, it is fundamentally a wages versus cost of living problem.
And that dynamic is playing out across an entire generation. In that same discussion, a millennial shared a very poignant anecdote about graduating right into the teeth of the global financial crisis.
Oh, right, the 2008 crash.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They had to take on six-figure student debt just to become competitive for entry-level jobs. And because every spare dollar went to servicing that debt and keeping up with housing costs, they completely missed out on their 20s as a saving decade.
Which is devastating because your 20s are when compound interest does its absolute best work.
Right.
And the NIRS data completely backs up that Reddit user's lived experience. The report highlights that workers burdened with student loan debt have significantly lower net worths overall and fall much further behind those age-based savings targets we talked about earlier.
They're starting from way behind the starting line.
Right. So what does this all mean? If you are staring at a bank balance of a few $1,000s and the basic math of living expenses is actively working against you, it really feels like the game is rigged.
It means we're witnessing the emergence of two completely different Americas when it comes to retirement.
Yeah.
The Center for Retirement Research analyzed the 2022 survey of consumer finances, and the divide is stark.
How bad is it?
Well, on one side, older, higher-income households are thriving. Their combined 401k and IRA balances jumped from $144,000 in 2019 to $204,000 in 2022.
That is a massive jump for just 3 years.
It really is. But for the bottom 40% of earners, their financial situation actually deteriorated during that same economic period.
So the gap isn't just sitting there, it's actively widening. But this raises a huge question about that top half of the country, the ones hitting those record Vanguard and Fidelity milestones.
Right.
What is their secret? I mean, if they aren't all financial geniuses day trading tech stocks on their lunch breaks, how are they accumulating so much wealth?
The secret isn't active stock picking, and it certainly isn't superhuman financial discipline.
Okay, so what is it?
The secret is system design, specifically the modern automated 401k plan.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The data shows that apathy and laziness are actually being weaponized for our benefit. Think about how a 401k used to work. Like, you got hired, you received a massive stack of confusing paperwork from HR, you had to decide how much of your paycheck to sacrifice, and then you had to pick from a menu of 30 different mutual funds.
Which is terrifying for most people.
Right. Most people just got overwhelmed and threw the paperwork in a drawer. But Vanguard's 2026 preview shows that 61% of plans now use auto-enrollment.
And for large employers, it's almost 80%.
Yeah. When you get hired, you are automatically put into the plan. You basically have to actively fight HR to stop saving.
And importantly, 62% of those automated plans are no longer defaulting employees at a timid 1% or 2% contribution rate.
Right.
They're defaulting them in at 4% or higher.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just getting you in the door. 71% of Vanguard plans now feature auto-escalation.
I love the mechanics of auto-escalation. It is basically a psychological cheat code. Explain how that works for the employee.
So auto-escalation automatically raises your savings rate by 1% each year, and it's usually timed to coincide with annual raises. So if you get a 3% raise, 1% invisibly slides over to your 401k, and 2% hits your paycheck.
Wow.
You still see your take-home pay go up, so you never really feel the pinch of saving more. Because of this invisible escalator, 45% of participants increased their savings rate in 2025 without ever logging into their accounts.
It's like turning your retirement account into a financial self-driving car. You just get in the vehicle, fall asleep at the wheel, and the car navigates all the traffic and drives you straight to retirement.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And the industry even has a name for this now. They call it the DIFM, or Do It For Me Investor.
Do it for me. I love that.
Right. Vanguard notes that almost 70% of their participants are entirely in professionally managed allocations, primarily target date funds.
And target date funds, or TDFs, are basically the engine of that self-driving car.
Right. They operate on what's called a glide path. When you're in your 20s and 30s, the fund is heavily invested in stocks for maximum growth.
Because you have time to recover from any market dips.
Exactly. But as you approach your target retirement year, the fund automatically rebalances. It starts selling off volatile stocks and buying stable bonds to protect your wealth.
Nice.
And what the Vanguard data reveals is that participant trading, meaning people actively logging in to move their money around, is at a record low of just 5%.
Because they're asleep in the self-driving car. They aren't staring at the dashboard, so they don't panic when the market hits a pothole.
Exactly. The data shows pure target date fund investors trade 4 to 5 times less than do-it-yourself investors.
Oh.
They don't panic sell during market dips, which is usually what destroys a portfolio's long-term returns.
Makes sense.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this massive automated wealth machine actually traces back to a single piece of legislation,
Really? Which one?
the Pension Protection Act of 2006.
Okay, this is a crucial piece of history to understand. How did one law change everything?
Well, before 2006, employers were terrified of being sued by employees if the stock market crashed. So if they offered auto-enrollment at all, they defaulted workers into quote-unquote safe cash or money market accounts.
But those earn virtually nothing.
Right. The problem is, those accounts earn practically nothing, meaning employees were silently losing purchasing power to inflation every single year.
Ugh.
But the 2006 Act created a legal safe harbor. It allowed employers to change their default investments from those stagnant cash accounts into growth-oriented target date funds without fear of litigation.
So by just changing the legal default setting, behavioral economics was fully unleashed.
Yeah.
Human inertia is so powerful. Removing the friction of choice and relying on our natural tendency to just go with the flow has arguably created more millionaires than any financial literacy seminar in history.
Without a doubt.
But that automated self-driving car only works if you actually have a job that offers one.
Right.
And when we look at who actually has the keys to these accounts, the wealth gap makes perfect, brutal sense.
You're touching on the deep demographic fractures in this landscape. We have to look closely at who is benefiting from this system and who is being left out. Let's break it down, starting with Generation X.
Gen X is fascinating right now. The sources show they actually have really high savings rates, but they are buckling under serious financial strain.
Yeah.
Over 25% of Gen Xers currently have an outstanding 401k loan. They're literally rating their own futures to pay for the present. Why is the strain so concentrated there?
It's the sandwich generation effect.
Oh, right.
Gen X is at a life stage where they are caught in the middle, simultaneously trying to fund exorbitant college tuition for their children while also paying out of pocket for health care and caregiving for their aging parents.
That is a lot of pressure.
It is. And the 401k often becomes the only accessible pool of capital to handle those dual pressures.
Then you look at the data on women, and it's basically a completely split screen. Fidelity reports that female savers who have been continuously invested in their 401k for 15 straight years have hit an incredible average balance of $508,700.
Which is fantastic.
It is. But when you zoom out to the broader population, NIRS notes that the median savings for women overall is only 17% of their recommended target. How do we reconcile that?
We reconcile it by looking at how the workplace is structured. That $508,000 figure applies to women who have had uninterrupted access to a corporate plan.
Uninterrupted.
Right. But that just isn't the reality for most women. The median falls off a cliff because of the compounding effect of the gender wage gap, combined with the fact that women are statistically far more likely to take years out of the workforce for caregiving.
Whether for newborns or elderly relatives.
Exactly. And every year out of the workforce isn't just a lost year of wages, it's a lost year of employer matches and compound interest.
Man. Well, on a slightly brighter note, the sources highlight Gen Z. They are showing really strong habits early on. Over 13% of Gen Z workers proactively increased their contribution rates in late 2025.
That's great to see.
Yeah. They seem hyper-aware of the financial hurdles they are facing.
They are, but we still see massive systemic divides when we analyze race in education. The data shows that Asian and white workers are currently much closer to their savings targets, at 23% and 20% respectively. Contrast that with Black and Hispanic workers who are sitting at just 11% of their targets.
And the education gap is just as stark, right? Workers with a high school diploma are only at 10% of their savings target, while those with an advanced degree are at 26%.
This goes right back to the access issue, doesn't it?
Entirely. Advanced degrees often unlock access to the types of corporate jobs that offer those self-driving 401ks, generous employer matches, and auto-escalation features.
Yeah.
If your education tracks you into gig work, hourly retail, or certain trades, you're largely locked out of the automated wealth machine.
And because of the relentless cost of living pressures we've discussed, we're seeing a rise in what the industry calls leakage.
Vanguard notes that hardship withdrawals ticked up to 6%. When people don't have 3 to 6 months of emergency cash saved up, that 401k stops being a retirement vehicle and starts acting as a vital last resort safety net today.
Totally at the expense of their tomorrow.
Exactly. So, if I can address you, the listener, for a moment, this sounds incredibly stressful. If half the country has no retirement savings and 56 million people don't even have a workplace plan to leak from, what on earth is their backup plan?
The sobering reality is that for the 50% without a workplace plan, Social Security is the only backup plan they have.
The only one.
Right now, Social Security provides about half the total income for a typical older adult in America. For many, it provides nearly all of it.
Wow.
But the reports from the Center for Retirement Research highlight a looming cliff. The Social Security Trust Fund could face a major structural shortfall by 2034.
Which, depending on when you are listening to this, is less than a decade away.
Yes. And if Congress doesn't act to fix the funding mechanism, it could potentially trigger an automatic 20% cut in benefits across the board.
A 20% cut, that's massive.
It is. This raises an important question. For the millions of Americans relying entirely on this system because their wages simply didn't allow them to save, how much of a safety net will actually be there to catch them?
Wow. Okay, let's pull all this together and recap the journey we've been on, because we are truly looking at a tale of two retirements here.
We really are.
On one side of the chasm, you have a group riding the wave of system design. They have access to auto-enrollment, invisible auto-escalation, target date funds, and they are using that self-driving car to hit record wealth.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you have a massive group battling the high cost of living, systemic debt, and a lack of workplace access. They are sitting at a median savings of $955, relying entirely on a Social Security system that is staring down a funding cliff.
It is a profound dichotomy that defines the current American economy.
But here is the critical thing to remember. Regardless of which side of that statistical divide you fall on right now, the simple fact that you are listening to this, that you are engaging with how the machinery works, puts you in a position of power.
Absolutely.
You now know how the auto escalator works. You understand why target date funds are effective. You can make active choices about your future, whether that means advocating for a plan at work, bumping up your contribution by a single %, or just finally opening that IRA.
And I want to leave you with a final lingering idea to mull over as we wrap up.
Let's hear it.
We have spent this entire deep dive talking about the mathematics of saving enough money to hit age 65 and permanently stop working.
Right.
But given the reality of the data we just went through with life expectancies rising, the cost of living soaring, and half the country having virtually nothing saved, we really have to ask a much broader question.
Okay.
Is the traditional concept of retirement, this idea of a hard, permanent stop to all labor at age 65, simply an outdated 20th century invention?
Oh, wow.
Will the next generation be forced to redefine retirement entirely, blending part-time passion work, mid-career sabbaticals, and phased, gradual retirements, simply because the math demands a new way of living?
It's a fascinating thought. Maybe the goal isn't to stress over hitting a $1.46 million magic number so you can escape your life. Maybe the goal is to use the tools we talked about today to build a sustainable life that you don't feel the need to permanently retire from.
Exactly.
The future of personal finance might not be about perfect precision, but about adaptability. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening.